Merry Best Games of Day, everyone! I hope you've sent your wish lists to Father Bestgames and been good all year, otherwise you'll be getting right to Hell Retributionin in your Best Games of stocking. You don't want that, do you? Indeed, it is that time again when we cast our mind back to a past year to look at the most fabulous games of that particular 12-month period, and today it's 2015's time to shine. As always, before we settle in and get to the games, we must first reflect upon the rules. Repeat after me. A game can qualify for today's best of list if it was released in the year 2015 in at least one territory and received a minimum of 7 professional reviews. We don't count ports, re-releases, or collections, as we'll talk about those in the list pertaining to their original release year, assuming they make the cut. Also, we don't count games enhanced for the new generation, such as Grand Theft Auto 5, which would have taken the top spot 3 years running if it weren't for those criteria. Some new extra rules on the end there, you weren't expecting that, were you? With all of that nice and clear, I'm Ben from TripleJump, and here are the 10 best games of 2015. Number 10. Rocket League, 89.22%. You might assume that a game like Rocket League would only appeal to lads, but you'd be wrong, as even if you're not a fan of football or fast cars, the game is wonderfully enjoyable. The premise is rather straightforward. Players hop into a little digital car and are plonked into a stadium, either with or without teammates depending on which game mode they've chosen, but always with at least one opponent. They must then put the pedal to the metal and try to score as many goals as possible by driving full pelt into a gigantic ball. Naturally, whichever side has scored the most points by the end of the match is the winner. It's an incredibly easy game to learn, but a devilishly tricky one to master. Although some critics weren't fans of the game's physics, which they claimed made the ball feel too floaty, they had heaps of compliments for several other aspects of Rocket League, including the multiplayer graphics and overall fun experience of playing the title. To this day, Rocket League remains a popular game, and thanks to a transition to a free-to-play model in 2020, we don't see that changing anytime soon. Number 9. Super Mario Maker, 89.41%. It was previously thought that there are only 2 things in life that are certain: death and taxes. However, I'd like to make an addendum to that because it's quite clear that there are actually 3 things in life that are certain: death, taxes, and the fact that Mario and/or chums will make an appearance on one of these best of X year lists. Released for the Wii U in September 2015, Super Mario Maker is both a platforming title and a creation tool that allows players to make their very own levels and share them with the rest of the world. The Creation Suite comes with all of the features you'd expect from a piece of software that lets its users make Super Mario levels, such as Goombas, warp pipes, and power-ups, but it also gives players the opportunity to let their imaginations run wild by making the unexpected happen. Stack enemies, make pipes, misbehave, or wear a shell as a helmet. The world really is your oyster. Or are there oysters in Mario? Editor? It's on screen, there's your answer. Super Mario Maker released to a positive reception from critics who directed most of their praise towards the creative tools that were easy to get to grips with but provided players with hours and hours of fun. Number 8. Fallout 4, 89.79%. Do you ever wonder just how well you'd fare if the worst should happen and civilization collapsed due to nuclear war? Then by golly, will you be a fan of this entry. Fallout 4 is set in 2287, 210 years after nuclear war has devastated Earth, and tells the story of the sole survivor, a player-created character who is sealed in Vault 111 just as the Great War goes down. They are awakened sometime later to see their spouse murdered and son kidnapped before being put back into cryogenic sleep, ultimately emerging from the vault in 2287 with but 2 things on their mind: find their son and pick up every piece of cutlery in every single house get vengeance for their partner's death. The game takes place in a large open world that players can explore at their leisure and is filled to bursting with interesting characters, ferocious enemies, and more side quests than you can shake an irradiated stick at. Upon its release, Fallout 4 garnered a great deal of praise from critics who were impressed by the thought-provoking narrative, intuitive combat, and the sheer number of things there were to do in the game. How fantastic! I assume we'll be seeing whatever was next for the Fallout series on a later list. Right? Yeah? Are we? Oh no. Number 7. Tales from the Borderlands Episode 5, The Vault of the Traveler, 90%. The Borderlands series isn't exactly noted for its narrative excellence, and whilst all 3 titles in 2K's venerable franchise are brilliant, especially Borderlands 2, none of them are what you'd call story-focused. Thankfully, if you're looking for an engaging plot set in the Borderlands universe, then Tales from the Borderlands has you covered. Not new Tales from the Borderlands, that one is bona fide rubbish. The game is set sometime after the events of Borderlands 2 and focuses on the exploits of Reese, a Hyperion employee, and Fiona, a Pandoran con artist, as they team up and embark on an adventure to find and open a vault. Like many of Telltale's other titles, Tales from the Borderlands is an episodic adventure, and it's up to players to explore the environment, interact with various objects, and solve the simple puzzles that are littered throughout the game. Every episode of Tales from the Borderlands was well received, but it was the fifth and final one, The Vault of the Traveler, that earned the highest review scores, with critics lauding the outstanding writing, side-splitting humour, and the fact that it concluded the story perfectly, tying up every plot thread nice and neatly. Number 6. The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D, 90.39%. If you've watched the rest of our Best of X Year videos, you'll know that this isn't the first time that The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask has made an appearance. Indeed, the original N64 version made it to number 4 in our 10 Best Games of 2000 video, earning an average review score of 95%. Hang on, that can't be right. 95% and it only got to number 4. Outrageous. The enhanced remake, Majora's Mask 3D, didn't make quite as big of a splash with critics as the game it's based on, but it was still good enough to earn critical acclaim. Like the original, Majora's Mask 3D stars Link, who finds himself trapped in the world of Termina with only 3 days until the end of the world. By using the Ocarina of Time to keep resetting the loop, he must collect several mysterious masks, wake the sleeping 4 giants, and defeat Skull Kid, or the people of Termina will be doomed. Critics had plenty of good things to say about the remake, commending its updated visuals, tweaks to the gameplay such as the improved journal and bosses, and how the remake refined the structure of the original without compromising the premise. You might say it was a major success. Yep. Number 5. Nuclear Throne, 90.43%. It seems like the good people of 2015 were all a bit nuke happy, as this is the second game on this list to be set post-apocalypse. Unlike Fallout 4, however, Nuclear Throne is a top-down roguelike shoot-'em-up with bullet hell elements, and the aim is to fight through each level, upgrading your weapons as you go until you meet the final boss, the eponymous Nuclear Throne. Upon defeating the boss, the player is transported back to the beginning, the difficulty is cranked up a notch, and they simply rinse and repeat until they die. Fun! The game's plot is heavily debated by the community, and why the mutant creatures that star in the title are trying to reach the Nuclear Throne is something of a mystery, but in fairness, when you've got bullets raining on you from all sides, that ceases to be much of a concern. Visually appealing, fast-paced, and challenging, Nuclear Throne quickly won over players and earned decent review scores across the board. Critics complimented its presentation, visceral combat, and wide variety of characters and upgrades, all of which came together to give players a highly exciting and satisfying run-and-gun experience. Number 4. Bloodborne, 92%. We come now to a game that's more challenging than most, and one that certainly isn't for everyone, but if you're happy to dedicate a good chunk of your life to repeatedly having your character smushed into the paving, and don't mind the odd eldritch horror or 12, then Bloodborne is certainly worth your time. Developed by From Software, the studio most famous for the equally hard-as-nails Dark Souls series, and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment, Bloodborne places players into the heavily viscera-soiled shoes of a hunter who must explore the city of Yharnam in order to find the source of a mysterious blood-borne plague, like in the title. You get it? That transforms Yharnam's residents into horrific monsters. Gameplay-wise, Bloodborne is an action RPG, and players must make their way through the world, battling hideous, deformed creatures and leveling up their character in order to give them the best chance of overcoming the horrors ahead. Bloodborne received widespread critical acclaim, with reviewers calling out its unsettling atmosphere and aesthetic, rewarding and fast-paced combat, and sparse storytelling as reasons that the game was worth playing. If you're struggling with Bloodborne's high level of difficulty, here's a top tip from me to you. Get good. Also, please can we have a remaster or a 60 frames patch? Please, 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 please. Number 3. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, 93%. More monsty fun now as we turn our attention to The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, a game that, like Bloodborne, is also a supernatural creature-filled RPG, but unlike Bloodborne, is unlikely to cause you to launch your controller out of a window in a fit of rage. Like its two predecessors, The Witcher 3 focuses its attention on the exploits of Geralt of Rivia, the titular Witcher, as he attempts to track down his adoptive daughter Ciri, all whilst fending off a smorgasbord of vile monstrosities and the evil Wild Hunt. The world of The Witcher 3 is not only absolutely stunning, but is also jam-packed with things to do. The main story alone takes most players upward of 50 hours to complete, and if you start undertaking all of the Witcher contracts, side quests, and scavenger hunts, you're looking at well over 100 hours of content. The sheer number of things to do in the game was just one of the aspects that critics praised, along with the immersive world, unique and interesting cast of characters, and the narrative. Upon release, there were some technical issues, though many of these were fixed by the developer and weren't enough to prevent the game from being considered one of the best ever made. Number 2. Undertale, 94.11%. It's really rather amazing what one person can do when they put their mind to it. Our writer, for example, can just about get out of bed in the morning if she tries really, really hard. Toby Fox, on the other hand, can develop an entire game all by himself. It's the same thing, really, both similar levels of effort. Undertale sees players controlling a small child after they've fallen into the underground, a place to which monsters have been banished following a war with humans. Along the way, they'll meet a number of creatures, some of whom will try to attack the protagonist, and it's up to the player to decide whether to kill them or pacify them. In this RPG, players must explore the world, solve puzzles, and engage with the various monsties, with their choices seriously affecting the outcome of the game. Critics were blown away by Undertale and praised pretty much everything that it had to offer. The outstanding writing, unique characters, and nuanced combat system won the game a plethora of fans, and one critic even went as far as to call it one of the most progressive and innovative RPGs to come in a long time. They were not wrong. Number 1. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain, 95%. Our number 1 entry today is somewhat tinged with sadness, not because of what it is, after all, Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain is one of the greatest games ever made, but for what it represents. The end of an era for video game auteur and bestest buddy of Jeff Keighley, Hideo Kojima. MGS5 is not only the final game in the Metal Gear series to be blessed with Kojima's involvement, but it's the last one that's actually any good, with 2018's Metal Gear Survive taking a critical bashing. MGS5 is set in 1984, 9 years after the events of Ground Zeroes, and follows Big Boss as he embarks on a quest for revenge against those who killed his men and almost killed him. Like its predecessors, MGS5 is a stealth title, so the gameplay focuses heavily on avoiding enemies and subduing them with non-lethal weaponry. The gaming public was floored by MGS5, with critics lauding its varied gameplay mechanics, open-world design, graphics, the level of freedom given to the player, and the performances of the voice cast apart from Kiefer Sutherland. You name it, players loved it. So congratulations to you, Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain, for being the very best game of 2015. Now, if we could find a way to get Kojima and Konami to settle their differences, that'd be grand.